All right, we are back again for the 2022 college football season. Believe it or not, Mark, it's a lot better this year than the last few years. That's for sure. So far, we don't have to deal with any of the pandemic issues, and we can only keep our fingers crossed that it's all going to be about college football.
Knock on wood. Let's just hope so. That'd be really, really nice for everybody if we can get through a season with no rescheduled games or no canceled games, uh, just like football used to
Ugh.
be. So I think we have a good chance of doing that this year.
What we're going to be doing to begin is we're going to have two reports. One is going to be previewing the group of five, including every independent team except for Notre Dame. So that's what we're going to do first here, this first report. Our second report is going to be Power Five, including Notre Dame. And really, all we're doing is we're going to go through as many teams as we can in each conference and in the independents that we believe are the teams to keep an eye on, the sleepers, the players, and things like coaching changes. Mark is obviously going to throw in all the important handicapping information from those teams that we talk about that might be important, because if you want to know what's really going on in depth with all of the teams, then that's why you've got to order this. This is the 2022 Playbook magazine. This is NFL and college football. So this is available at playbooksports.com, and you can actually see the ticker up there also has everything else that's available, or um, some of the main what we would call, I guess, goodies that are available at Playbook Sports, including the football newsletter.
Yeah, everything it is that we're offering this football season with a lot of nice discounts as well. Good time to get on board right now when the season begins. And that magazine that you just showed everybody, Greg, is flying out the door right now. And we're going to sell out of it again here shortly. We'll be out of it before the NFL season begins. So, anybody watching the show, if you don't have a copy now, I suggest you order it right away to have it in your hands in time for the football season.
And just beginning, let's see, as the NFL information ends and the college football information begins in the magazine, one of the pages here references all the coaching changes. And there have been some really big coaching changes. And as far as the group of five is concerned, you take a look, and even here, not just new coaches there, but coaches that have left the group of five. Maybe one of the biggest exodus was Billy Napier leaving Louisiana because he did such a tremendous job there. Now he gets to coach the Florida Gators. So that's a big transition as far as that's concerned. But we're going to go through all that, of course, and see, because it's interesting. A lot of these coaches that have successful coaching careers in the Power Five conferences, a lot of them come from Group of Five programs.
Absolutely, that's where they begin their careers, and they keep elevating and moving. They just hope they don't move into a Peter Principle type role where they get to a level that they can't handle. But you mentioned Billy Napier coming right now into Florida after the big years that he had in his years at Louisiana Lafayette. He'll be obviously an eye to keep somebody else to keep an eye on this football season here. And in the reverse, there's another guy, if you will, Joe Moorhead.
Yes.
Used to be a head coach at Mississippi State. Now he goes back the other way. He's going to Akron to take over a Zips program, who I think he's going to do a lot of good things with personally. Okay.
I love those types of hires because you feel sorry for those schools that just never win. And this gives them an opportunity to win, at least for a few years.
For sure it does. For sure. The players are excited, the fans are excited, and he'll get the very best out of a team like that. So we're going to talk a little bit about them when we do their preview here, but I think there's some good value to Akron, if for no other reason, because of the Joe Moorhead situation that's going on there.
Yeah. So on this show today, for instance, look, Jim Mora
And there
is
you
at
go.
Connecticut.
Yep.
So look at that. Jim Mora is at Connecticut. Mike McIntyre is at FIU. And he's one of those program rebuilders.
Yes, he is.
So that's Clay Helton is at Georgia Southern.
Yeah, how about a drop? That's a drop without a parachute right there.
Wow, that
Yep.
is awesome.
Yep.
So those are some of the good. Jerry Kill is back to coaching again. Health is the main issue. Apparently, he's healthy enough to be a head coach again. He's at New Mexico State, another independent school. So I think those are, just looking over here. Yeah, those are pretty. Oh, Don Brown. is back to coaching again at UMass, and we know what a great defensive coordinator he's been for so long. And boy, does UMass need a turnaround.
Oh, they need a big turnaround, and he was an excellent hire because, as you mentioned, it all starts with defense. Defensive coordinator at Michigan, my goodness. I mean, he's got the credentials, and hopefully he can do some recruiting there. It's not going to happen this year or likely in the next 2 years, but if they give him a chance, he'll turn that program around.
All right, let's start with the group of five independents. And by the way, I want to remind everybody this is our main preview where we go over all the teams and the conferences and so forth. We are going to have our predictions, our final predictions, which are going to definitely include like over under totals. Matter of fact, Gary Furman from Kane Sport did that interview yesterday. One of the handicapping questions I asked him was to let me know something about Miami that gamblers may want to know to help him out. He said Miami Hurricanes over 8.5 total. So what do you think about that?
I think he's right on with that. They're in my backyard, as you know, Greg, down here, and I'm reading a lot of real good things. And I was on a show earlier today, and they were asking me about Miami, and I had to admit that I made a big mistake about Mario Cristobal. When he went to Oregon, I thought he was a little bit in over his head, and I thought he was more of a rah-rah type of a coach. But he really showed his true colors, and he did it at the recruiting level. And that's what really vaulted Oregon, and he's doing it right the same way down here at Miami. He's putting a recruiting classes together that have zoomed past Florida and Florida State. And also, what he's doing here is he's bringing back all the alum. He's getting them all involved in the program here right now. All the great stars from the program, they're at practices. They're wrapping their arms around the whole program. So there's a lot of good things going on with Miami here, and I agree with that. I think they're going to be a player in the ACC this year.
Yeah, we'll talk more about that on our Power Five preview. By the way, reason I mentioned that is because we already have a handful of interviews from some of these top analysts, Miami, Auburn, Iowa, and then we have a lot more to come. Matter of fact, Ole Miss we're doing this week. We're actually going to do the Conference USA in the next couple of days. We're also going to tap onto other teams that I have scheduled, like NC State, and just a bunch more. I mean, the USC's coming up soon, Oregon. So we have a lot of teams, and so my point though is subscribe to the channel. You subscribe to the channel, it makes it a lot easier. So whenever one of these previews are available, it's accessed immediately up on your YouTube account, and you'll be able to see and check it out. So let's again start with the independents not named Notre Dame, and it's BYU. Now we can't put BYU kind of with Notre Dame with the Power Five because they're just not there, and it's tough to be an independent. But the other reason is because even though BYU has a tough schedule, it's just not. I don't know if you look at their schedule, it's monstrous, and I think it's definitely good enough where if they were to say go undefeated from this schedule, they'd be in the playoffs. Because when you take on Baylor, Oregon, Notre Dame, Arkansas, Boise State, Stanford, I mean, that's just really tough. But since we know they're not on par with Notre Dame, we figured they're the top independent school for the group of fives. And that's going to be the only thing that's going to hold them back, Mark. That is a real tough schedule. They've got a talented quarterback in Jaron Hall. But I just wonder whether or not they're going to be able to win. I don't know. You think they can win like 9 or 10 games with that schedule?
I believe they can, Greg. They've won 21 games, 10 and 11 the past 2 years. And the best news for BYU is they are the number one ranked team overall in the country in returning experience. That's by Bill Conley from ESPN. In our magazine, they're number two. Then he revised those rankings after the magazine went to print. They are the number one ranked team right now. And those teams that are ranked number one in returning experience always do well the next year against the spread. You couple that with the fact that last year BYU, while they won 10 games, they were only 4-8 against the spread. They couldn't handle the point spread number. I believe they'll get the job done this year. They're going to be a real nice play-on team for most of the year, especially when they're taking points in those big games.
Yeah, because last year, like you mentioned, 21-4 the last 2 years. The schedule toughened up big time last year, and yet they were still excellent, 5-0, undefeated against the Pac-12, And they beat Utah for the first time in like over a decade, and all Utah did was win the Pac-12 championship.
And may win the Pac-12 again this year. That's how good Utah is. So
Yeah.
that was a big feather in BYU's cap last year, and I know that Kalani Sitake is really looking forward to this. And he's got Jaron Hall back, that quarterback who makes all the noise for them. So again, they're a football team you have to have on your watch list this season.
Yeah, the thing that the reason why I think they'll have the biggest trouble is because of the defense. They don't really have. They are a couple of decent players. They always do, but it's just not loaded. It's really going to be more about the offense and Jaron Hall and can they outscore some of those teams that they're going to be playing. But it should be fun. I mean, right off the bat, those first three games, even the opener, and this is a little bit of a teaser because we're going to talk about the AAC next. This is one of my top sleepers in all of college football. Not to win a championship, but that's USF. I love what's going on in South Florida, and that's their first game. So they got to go to South Florida. Then it's Baylor at home, and it's at Oregon. So that's going to be a tough way to start.
Well, let me tell you this: if they go to South Florida and stub their toe, the world's want to kind of bail out on BYU. That will be the time to get on
That's it.
BYU.
Take them
Okay.
the next week against Baylor.
Exactly, or
Revenge.
the week after that against when they go to Oregon, right? So there'll be some juicy spots for the Cougars this year, and I'm with you. I think South Florida is also going to be a real must-watch team this year as well.
And of course they lost their big-time running back as well. BYU did. So that's something that, yeah, but like all the other, and that's like really the only major starter they lost.
It's the only starter they lost. Exactly
Yeah.
right.
Army, Monken has done an incredible job at Army. 44-20 over the last 5 years. 39-12 for the last 5 years. Andre Carter. It's all about Andre Carter. We're going to follow Andre Carter this year. One of the top defensive players that I've seen come out of Army, maybe ever. So he could be a first-round draft pick.
He can, and this is an Army football team that I read an article about Jeff Monken, and he's really a little bit put back at how little respect that the Army football program gets, and especially since he's been at the helm, because he's really, really turned things around there at this program. He's been there 9 years. He's won 58 games, and they have been the best of all the military teams here of late. 9 wins, back-to-back football seasons for this team. And what I like about them is they went out on a bit of a sour note last year when they lost it to Navy in that game as a 7-point favorite here. That will get their attention early on this football season here. I think you've got to have Army on your play-on list this year as well. And also, the little note we said in the magazine about the stat you'll like is he's only 2 wins away from being the second winningest coach in Army football history. He'll get those 2 wins early on in the football season here. This football team is always coming to play hard because they're a military school and they're very, very well coached.
Yeah, the one thing that you're looking for with these types of teams that run the triple option is you're looking for that quarterback. Navy usually has those superstar quarterbacks. Army hasn't, but they've had decent quarterback play, which is the reason they've been winning. I think they'll have. I think they got one of these quarterbacks back this year, which will stabilize the offense, but nobody special. The schedule is also tough. Right out of the gates, they take on two of the best Group of 5 teams from last year. They got to go at Coastal Carolina to start the season, and then they host UTSA the very next week. They also have Wake Forest, who they lost to at home last year. They got to go on the road there. By the way, I know we're doing Wake Forest on our next report. Sad to hear the news about Sam Hartman. Hopefully, it's not a season-long kind of injury, but they'll be at Wake Forest in October. And that's a pretty tough schedule for Army. But you know what? If they can win 2 out of those 3, it'll be a great season.
You look at their first 5 games. The first 5 opponents won a combined 52 games last year. Nothing easy is going to happen with Army early out of the gate this football season here. So they're going to have to come hard and come charged and come prepared. Even Villanova is going to be a tough game for them.
Oh,
if for no other reason, because they're coming off of, as you mentioned, Coastal Carolina and UTSA. So don't jump off of Army if they stub their toe a little bit early on. If they open up 2 and 3, that just means reload the cannons with this football team here. But I have to put them on my play-on list this year. I'm a big Jeff Monken fan.
And good point. Mention also Georgia State.
Yes.
Who's in that top 5, because Elliott has done a fantastic job with Georgia State, and they could definitely be a sleeper in the Sun Belt.
Look at the last half of their schedule there, if you will. Take a look at it, Greg. When they close out their season here, the last 7 games against only one winning
There you
team.
go.
Yep. So they will build some momentum by the end of the season.
And that's Air Force.
That's correct.
Okay, Liberty. Wow. What a 2 seasons for Hugh Freeze and Liberty. Matter of fact, last year, not as successful as the 10-1 2020 season, but still, what is that? 18. Really, if you look at it, Hugh Freeze so far is 26-11 at Liberty. So Willis is gone. Charlie Brewer becomes the new quarterback from Baylor.
How
So
about
you really
that?
have to like that.
You sure do. He did a nice job with Baylor. He was beat out by an up and coming quarterback who will be starting for them this year. Nice transfer for Liberty to haul him in and to keep the momentum going for Hugh Freeze. Hugh Freeze is a winner. Wherever it is that he's been, he's won football games straight up and against the spread. And like we said, he loves to beat up crippled teams. That's the point spread thing you'll want to remember all season long. When he goes up against teams that are less than 333 in the year, he's 20-4 against the spread. Hugh Freeze, a major cripple shooter.
All right. So yeah, well, Liberty should be fine again this year. Their first 3 games, 2 of them are pretty tough. They got to take on UAB at home and at Wake Forest. They also play BYU and Arkansas as 2 of their toughest games on the season. That Arkansas game is going to be on the road. As far as some of the other teams, these independents, new coaches. So you've got Jerry Kill at New Mexico State. They're 8-30, 8-30 the last 4 years. They were 25-74 in a 9 years run with Doug Martin, who's gone. They'll be in the Conference USA, by the way, next year. UConn gets Jim Mora, who we talked about, the former NFL coach and UCLA coach, and Don Brown, as we mentioned, at UMass. They were 2-26 the last 3 years. Don Brown, let's remember, he was a head coach at UMass during the glory days. They won an 06. They played in the 2006 title game in the FCS at the time, and he was 43-19 in 5 years from 2004 to 2008 at UMass. And I have to think, in my opinion, I think out of those 3 teams, New Mexico State, UConn, and UMass, I'm going to give UMass the edge. I think they're going to have the better of the year between those 3 teams.
Well, I'm going to run with New Mexico State. I'm a big, huge Jerry Kill fan. I'm a little bit soft-hearted. I loved how he battled back from all of his afflictions, his disabilities, and wherever he's been, his teams give everything they've got for the man. Key stat for New Mexico State this year is Jerry Kill is outstanding as a double-digit underdog. 25 times in his career, he's beat the spread 17 times. They'll be getting double-digit points plenty of times this year, okay?
Right.
So remember that when New Mexico State takes doubles this year.
Now, is that information you are providing, is that in the magazine?
Yes, it is.
Okay.
Yes, it is.
And now when you have the newsletter, is that something that when it's the week of those games, do you kind of put that information in the newsletter?
You can be sure I'll be calling that out when he's a double-digit underdog. Okay, he goes to Minnesota, he goes to Wisconsin. My goodness, he goes to Missouri
Every week.
At Liberty. I mean, he's gonna be taking a boatload of points.
Yeah.
One quick note in that first game against Nevada is you got a Nevada football team here that led the country last year in turnover margin. They lost their quarterback, Carson Strong. He's going to be in the NFL this football season here. They're changing their whole quarterback scheme. They're going from an air raid to a pro-style attack here. A lot of changes at Nevada. New Mexico State is getting a good chunk of points in this game. In our preseason football newsletter, we previewed the first 7 or 8 games in the college football card, and you'll find in there our upset special is New Mexico State over Nevada.
Ooh, I like it. What is this point spread?
There you go. +8 right now. Okay.
Wow, +8. I bet you people are going to look at that without looking at anything else, and they're going to go, "How in the world is Nevada only an 8-point favorite?"
Well, for a lot of the reasons I just mentioned.
Sure, take advantage.
Right.
Okay, so let's turn our attention to the AAC, and this is just a different year. It's a new life because Cincinnati represented the first Group of 5 team in the playoffs. But unfortunately for Luke Fickell, a lot of those key players are gone, including the quarterback. That does not mean Cincinnati will be a bottom dweller AAC team. They're still going to be one of the top teams to beat. It's just that expecting them to be a playoff contender, no, not going to happen. They also have to find themselves a quarterback. Ritter was such a winner for that program, and I'm not very excited. When you're looking at a guy who may start that was a Eastern Michigan quarterback. So it's going to take some time, but they bring in Ivan Pace, who was I think he was the MAC Defensive Player of the Year last year from Miami of Ohio. He transfers over to Cincinnati. They're still going to be very good defensively, but like I said, I just think it's going to be. I even think it's going to be hard for them to win their division and play in the championship game. To represent one of the two teams because they don't have divisions in the AAC. I just think it's going to be kind of hard for them. They just lost so much.
That and the fact that they're going to be the hunted this year, okay, after crashing the party last year in the NCAA
That's
playoff.
Right.
And remember, they did so with Desmond Ridder, who was a 4-year starting quarterback. So they're basically starting all over. They're starting new again. And that turnover stat that I threw out to you about Nevada, who, by the way, right now, Nevada's a 10-point favorite. And I said 8. It's my speculation that they'll be 8 when they play the game because New Mexico State's going to get steamed in the game. But as far as
take it now, then.
You take it now, get the 10. But as far as Cincinnati is concerned, they were number 2 in the country last year in net turnovers at plus 15.
Yeah.
And those teams that do that are 1, 2, 3, the top 5 teams in the country in net turnovers almost always regress the next year, especially in turnovers and almost always to the spread. And you got to put Cincinnati on your play against list this season.
And they also got to go on the road at SMU, at Central Florida, at Tulsa. I think the Miami of Ohio game is going to be tougher than it normally is because that program is really at a high that they haven't been in a while, and their first game of the season is at Arkansas.
That won't be a cakewalk, believe me. That'll be a tough place for them to have to go. And if they take that loss, okay, they'll be on the heels of back-to-back losses in their college football playoff game, their season opening loss, and suddenly everything isn't cool in the Queen City for Cincinnati. So again, I think they're going to start out a little bit ragged here to begin the football season.
We have a line on that.
I don't know right now.
What do you think it should be?
I'm guessing I'm going to say Arkansas 4. Okay.
Okay. I think it'll be. Yeah, it's not bad. I mean, it could be a little bit higher.
Could be.
It all depends. I mean, if it's 4, I like Arkansas.
Yep.
I just think Arkansas is still heading up, and Cincinnati's got to come down a little bit. So, yeah. But that's a good opener. That's one of the openers you don't want to miss. All right, Central Florida, Gus Malzahn, year 2. We know Gus Malzahn knows how to coach. Last year was an okay, 9-4 season. The quarterback situation was a mess because their quarterback went down early. Plumlee, by the way, looks like the Ole Miss kid. Looks like he might be the starter for Central Florida. They've got some nice players on offense. Ryan O'Keefe is like one of those Swiss Army knives. You have Bowser at running back. The defense doesn't have any. They don't have the type of players yet that Malzahn's going to need if he wants to get this program back where they were, 5 or 6 years ago. But I suspect they're going to be even better. And I think they might actually end up better than Cincinnati this year, especially since they host Cincinnati on October 29th.
I agree with you. Gus Malzahn, there was a reason that he's not in Auburn this year. He just did not deliver the goods. I know his record looked good. And
how does Auburn feel about Gus Malzahn being gone now, huh? After last year?
Well, with Brian Harsin, they're not in love.
They're not happy. No.
That's for sure. But it's always inevitable with people at Arkansas. When they lose a game they shouldn't win. All of a sudden, fire the coach. He's gone. And I think what's going on with Central Florida this particular football season here, they do lose their quarterback. Okay, who is
transferred to which team?
He transferred out to
Oklahoma.
Okay. Exactly right. He transferred to Oklahoma. Dylan Gilbert, I believe his name was.
Dylan
Gabriel, correct. That's a big loss for this football program here. So what did Malzahn do? He had to go out and he had to hit the transfer portal really hard. That's not a good sign for football teams that usually like to recruit, but they have to revert to a transfer portal to do things just like that. But I still think because there's Cincinnati's going to get knocked down off of the totem pole here. They will be one of the football teams that will challenge them. It just depends upon what kind of quarterback they play. And this just in, I just looked what we were talking. Arkansas 7,
7. Okay.
7. There you were right.
I
Arkansas
thought it would
7.
be about 6. So
Yeah,
yeah, that's about right.
there you go.
Um, yeah, and again, Central Florida, by the way, their toughest non-conference game is against Louisville. They'll take on Louisville week 2 on September the 9th. And the other thing, you mentioned the transfers. Wow. I mean, going through the previews of breaking down these teams over the last few weeks, it's just a new era. It is amazing, all the transfers, and you got it. It's just a new. And look, I like it for the fact that, especially when you get these weaker teams, these weaker programs, and hey, I'd rather play for the B level team because I'm going to play. I'm going to start. So I think it levels the playing field more. Of course, I don't like it when the big programs get these really superstar players. Yeah, but I think in general, because there are a lot more substandard college or average college football teams than star college football teams, I think it's better overall because I think it could sprinkle all this talent across the nation, and it makes, I think, college football generally better.
It does. It's like last year we lived with an abundance of returning starters because of the super senior rule that was in effect. Now, instead of that, we've got transfers galore. And like you say, transfers galore means better talent to football teams that especially needed it. And there are coaches take different approaches to the transfer portal here. We know all about Lane Kiffin and what he does at Mississippi. I mean, what he does is the kids he brings in kids that were starters, not just disgruntled athletes who never got to play. He wants kids that started and will start for him. Then you got the other side of the coin. You've got Dabo Swinney, you've got Kirby Smart, who don't want to enter into the transfer portal. And the reason they don't enter into the transfer portal is because if you take a player in a transfer portal, you lose that recruit in your next recruiting session.
Yeah. And
Okay.
they do a good job recruiting. Yeah.
Yes, they do an excellent job. They would rather bring in players that they need to fill their gap rather than a hand me down. That's their
Yeah.
approach to it.
All right, Houston's next, and boy, as a Jet fan, I wasn't very happy to see that Marcus Jones ended up with the Patriots. I think he's a sleeper draft pick because he was a superstar for Houston. I mean, terrific kick returner, underrated cover corner, but now he's gone from Houston, so that's a big loss. You take a look at Holgerson, though. What a big year. They won 12 games. Unfortunately, they had their big year when Cincinnati was having their biggest year. So the question is how much can they duplicate that year? And I think they could do a pretty decent job because unlike Cincinnati's situation at quarterback, Clayton Tune returns. And Clayton Tune had a really good season last year. And I think out of the first 3 teams we've talked about in the AAC, Tune's the best quarterback.
Probably is inside that conference. He may well be just that. The problem here to me is that Dana Holgerson was really rocking and reeling, and he was on a real hot seat. Okay, up until last year.
Yeah.
Okay, look at the 2 previous seasons. He won 4 and 3 games after signing that mega contract. Okay, and then he got a bonus, a bonus in his mega contract when he enters the Big 12 conference, which they're going to be doing. Okay, so now all of a sudden he's living with the king's ransom. So he doesn't really care. The question here this year is, can they fill the shoes of the Cincinnati Bearcats? My other concern is they also lose their best running back from last football season, Alton McCaskill. He ran for almost 1,000 yards last year. He tore his ACL. That's really devastating for this program here. They're going to be on my watch list here to see exactly how they get out of the gate. They've got a tough game at Texas San Antonio to begin with. Texas Tech, their second game they're on the road also, is a very underrated football team. And then they're going to host Kansas, who they're going to probably be installed as 14 or 17-point favorites.
Kansas, watch out,
You
Lance
watch out.
Leopold.
Exactly right. Kansas is a very well-coached football team. Lance Leopold. Just ask Texas how,
Yes,
how well coached they are. So
yes.
I'm not buying on Houston Cougars this year. They're going to have to prove it to me.
Actually, I gotta remember how to pronounce his name. I think it's Leopold. I forget it. I know it's not how it looks, but it's early in the college football season. We will definitely uh, talk a lot about Kansas this year because they're an up and coming team, and that's a really good handicapping tidbit I want to throw out there, and I'll mention this throughout the season, and I said this last year. Every week in college football, you are always going to see at least one, if not two or three upsets of teams that are getting 15 or more points. And now the hard part, of course, is finding those teams because there's probably like 20 of them each week. But they occur, and it's something that I always try to take advantage of. I will always pick at least one of those teams and try to find that team, and sometimes a couple times. Not going to be, and the thing is, you don't have to be right every time. As long as you're right once every 4 times, maybe 5 times, you're making money.
Yeah, once a month on a money line with the double-digit dog, that keeps the flowers in bloom.
Yes, keeps my
Exactly
flowers in
right.
bloom.
And all you have to do is be logical about your approach and isolating those football teams. Letdowns, look-aheads, teams that are undervalued, teams that are overvalued. So I know that's one of the routes that you look at. It's one of the ones I do too because I love to play live dogs in money line plays in college football.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Can't make much in the NFL on it,
No.
but you can in college. Okay, East Carolina. Love what's going on with Mike Houston, and they get the quarterback returning again next year. Keaton Mitchell, one of the better running backs in the conference, so that's good. Um, do they have the team now that's ready to take that next step? There seems to be a lot of players returning from this team from last year. So and with Cincinnati coming down a little bit, Houston, maybe they're not as good as they were. So maybe East Carolina can inch a little bit closer to the top.
This is a football team that really, really improved last year, Greg. They won 7 games, and then they had a bowl bid in their back pocket, but it was canceled. They didn't weren't able to take advantage of the fruits of their rewards, if you will. So they're probably going to play with a little bit of a chip on their shoulder here. I think they're going to be a real sleeper team inside this conference this football season here. I wouldn't be surprised if they win 7 or 8 games again this year, and they end up going bowling for real this football season here. I like what they did last football season here, especially down the stretch. You look at what they did. They won 4 of their last 5 games to become bowl eligible. That was really, really impressive to me. They knocked off Memphis as a 4-point underdog here. They've got a lot working for them. East Carolina is going to be on my play-on list this season.
Yeah, and they lost on the road in back-to-back weeks at Central Florida as a 10-point dog by 4. And then the next week is a 13-point dog at Houston. They lost in overtime. And that was before their 4-game winning streak that got them into the bowl because they ended their season at home against Cincinnati.
And before those 2 losses, they had won 3 in a row. So
Yes.
they very quietly put together a really good football season last year. The 2 losses to begin the season, Appalachian State and South Carolina,
Yeah.
those aren't bad losses at all.
They lost by 3 at South Carolina.
Yeah, so they played a lot better
at home against South Carolina. Yes, that was
exactly
a very good year, and so that's why I'm thinking maybe a better, maybe they're going to win those games this year.
Well,
That'd
they
be
could.
a surprise team that could contend. Schedule wise, they do have to go to Cincinnati, but they get Central Florida at home. Wow, big time start of the season. They kick off against NC State, who actually could be an ACC champion type team. They also have to go to Brigham Young.
All they need to do is to play well in the NC State game, not get blown out, just enough to keep their confidence level where it's at because they know they've got a nice football team here. If they come out of that NC State game playing a well-played football game, I think they're on their way. But remember, opening 4 games in a row at home, they could open up 3-1 easily to begin the football season.
Yeah, matter of fact, their schedule is pretty nice. They can get off to a really nice start before they have to play Central Florida, BYU, Cincinnati, and Houston towards the end of the season. All right, Memphis, one of those teams. Silverfield, year 3. Hennigan, good quarterback. So that's always something that you're looking for. That gives them an edge there. But I don't know. I just think this is a bowl team. But I don't think this is a special team. I'm not sure Silverfield. He doesn't excite me. I know that you're talking about a guy that's sort of like like a group of fives, a group of 5 type of head coach, like what's his name, the coach from Arkansas, Pittman, is it?
Yeah, Sam Pittman, right.
Pittman, yeah, where he's not very exciting, offensive line coach, but that's a good head coach. Silverfield's okay, but he's not at that level. So yeah, I think Memphis is a bowl team, but I'm not sure they're much more than that.
Well, you know what they are is a team that has really lost money for their backers. He's been there. If you take a look at him, he's 6-15 to the spread in his 2 years. You know, there's
Oh,
not a
there
lot
you
of
go.
lot of
No wonder
people that.
why I don't like him.
There you go. Yeah, because you probably took
Lost money.
yeah, you took them to the dance a couple of times and they step on your toe.
Yeah.
But they're gonna. I'm with you. They're gonna have to prove it to me. There was nothing special about their season last year. They won their first 3 games. They only won 3 games after that. So I think right now Silverfield, I'm gonna say, is going to be. If he doesn't win this year, he'll enter next year on the hot seat here
Yeah.
because he's won 8, he's won 6, and if he doesn't win 6 this year, then all of a sudden the temperature's dropping on this football team.
Yeah, that's what I mean. I think he's that type of coach. He's that 500 type of coach. Okay, maybe he gets to a bowl every year, but is that really what Memphis is looking for? No, I think that if you recruit, I think Memphis is a very good opportunity. Now, I don't know how their finances are and all that, but that's a hotbed of recruiting. And if you get a guy that knows how to recruit, I think Memphis can be one of those top tier AAC programs. By the way, last year they got off to that 3-0 start. One of those wins was the win at home against Mississippi State. That was a big win for me. I remember that. I had him as one of my top picks that week, and I got kind of lucky because that was just a weird game. There were some weird plays, and but then after that, after starting 3-0 and beating Mississippi State, they would lose 3 straight, 4 out of 5, and 6 out of 8. It was just how do you not take advantage of that 3-0 start? So,
Yeah, that was dismal to say the least. They salvaged a win, if you will, their last game of the season by eking out a win over Tulane. So nothing special about that football team last year. If I had to give them a grade, I would say C minus last year.
SMU, Rhett Lashley is now the new head coach because what is it? Sonny Dykes, I believe, is now at TCU. Correct.
That's
So
correct. Yes.
Rhett Lashley has ties to SMU. Tanner Mordecai's back, so that's a big advantage to have Tanner Mordecai. He's one of those really good gunslinging type of group of 5 quarterbacks. So Rashee Rice is a very good receiver. They're going to put up a ton of points. Defensively, though, I just I don't see it happening. But I could see SMU definitely winning a couple of games they're not supposed to, but also losing a couple of games they're not supposed to. I think they'll have a good season, but nothing special.
Lashley was a good hire for this football program here. Comes from Miami of Florida, well respected, and they're going to improve their defense. They have to just by osmosis, because that was not Sonny Dykes' forte at all. The question is how much of an offense can they keep and reestablish? That's going to be the question mark here. It's tough for me to bring a new coach into a program that's gone bowling 3 years in a row. To make a case for him initially out of the gate when he has no coaching experience, no head coaching experience. So
Yes.
I'm going to put them on my watch list this year as well.
And then rounding out some of these other teams in the conference, Tulsa and Tulane. Philip Montgomery saved his job last year with Tulsa getting to a bowl. He doesn't get that team to a bowl and win those last 3 games. He's not back again this year, so we'll see what happens. And I don't really expect much out of Tulsa. Tulane, though, had a very, very disappointing season last year. Willie Fritz, he's a guy that we all kind of like because he's one of those underdog story coaches, and Tulane was off to a good start. But last year with Fritz, it just bottomed out really bad, and now he's kind of on the hot seat. But I expect them to rebound this year. I think they're going to be one of those teams that maybe we could take advantage of their 2 wins last year.
Well, before I get to Tulane, and I'm a big Willie Fritz guy, the Tulsa situation last year, like you mentioned, they salvaged their season with 4 straight wins, and they won 6 of the last 8 games to go bowling. They've gone bowling 2 years in a row now. So that's sort of, if you will, it does for sure. It keeps Montgomery off the hot seat. This will be his 8th year with the football program here, but he's going to have to do better than what he's doing here. 6 wins just doesn't cut it, especially when you're a long-term coach like that. Good to the spread last year. I think they'll struggle to win those 7 games this year. Willie Fritz, as you mentioned here, I like everything Willie Fritz does. Only 2 wins last football season here. People are going to want to jump ship, if you will. But look at those numbers last year, Greg. In our 4-year statistical review, which I love looking at. Okay. They went from 6 wins to 2 wins last football season here, but look at their stats last year. They were almost identical to their 6 win season here. They slipped backwards 2 yards offensively, and they slipped backwards 7 yards defensively. So, what happened with the football program here? They lost close call games, and they had turnovers didn't work in their way. That usually turns around the next year, and I think it'll do just that for Tulane this football season. I've got them on my play on list.
All right, and then also we've got South Florida. That's the team I said is my sleeper here. East Carolina has a sleeper chance in my mind to win the conference, but South Florida has a sleeper type of year where I think they could go bowling and maybe upset a couple of teams that nobody's expecting. They got a ton of kids back. They were playing a ton of young kids last year. Jeff Scott is a tremendous hire. They get Bohannon now at quarterback because their quarterback situation was really ugly last year. If they had a decent quarterback, they could have won a lot of those. They could have won those close games. So I like the fact that Bohannon's there now, and I believe that South Florida is on the rise, and they're going to start making waves this season.
I believe so too. Only 3 wins in 2 years, but don't give up on Jeff Scott. He's very, very well respected. Okay. And he also played a lot of young kids last year. They're going to come back very, very experienced this football season here. They got a ton of returning starters coming back. They've got all 5 starters on their offensive line coming back. You mentioned Bohannon, the kid who transfers in from Baylor. They got the makings of being a real good surprise football team this year. And I'm with you. I think this football team has the making to be a bowl team this year.
Yeah, and they got a tough schedule, which is the only thing that might hurt their bowl chances because BYU, as we mentioned, and Florida and Louisville on the road to start that basically that's their September schedule. 3 of their FBS opponents, so that's going to be kind of tough out of the gate. Navy and Temple will round it out, and unfortunately, the Navy's going through a tough spell now. For the second straight year, they've only won a combined 7 games. And look, this is what happens when you don't have one of your dynamic quarterbacks at Navy. It just changes everything for the program, and that's been the problem the last couple of years.
Well, it has, and but I'm going to still stick with Coach N here, Niumatalolo. He does a great job with this program. He's off back-to-back losing seasons, and I like what he did. Like I mentioned earlier on in the show here, their effort against Army to end the football season last year. They could have rolled over and died, but they didn't. Uh, I think that bodes well for this football program coming in here this football season here. I think they got a good chance to come back strong this football season here, and I'm going to put Navy on my surprise list this year. In fact, I think Navy is going to win their 6 games, and I think Navy's going to go bowling this year.
Okay, and then Temple, they get a first-year coach, Stan Drayton. It's going to be a long year.
It's been that way for Temple for the longest of times too. Since Matt Rule left the program, basically, the program's really gone south since then. 4 wins in the last 2 football seasons here. Not a whole lot to get excited about this football season here. I think in their first 5 games of the football season here is when they've got to make their hay. They don't face a winning team in any of their first 5 games. They've got to win at least 2 of those games if they're going to want to have any forward progress here. Will they be able to do that? That means they're going to have to beat Rutgers at home or Massachusetts home. They have to beat Duke on the road. They can beat Massachusetts, okay, but they won't beat Rutgers. And they'll beat Lafayette, that's a given. But Duke is going to be a real tough game here. It depends on what they do to begin the season, because look at their schedule going out here. Of all their remaining games here, they only face 2 losing teams here. I think it's going to be another down year for Temple this season.
Okay, now let's talk about the Mountain West. And there's 2 divisions there, starting in the Mountain with Boise State. And Boise State had a very strange year last year. They were not good at home, and yet they couldn't lose on the road. It was just very weird. And it was just a very average year. But they have a lot of talent coming back. Bachmeier has been there, it seems like, forever. He just has to stay healthy. That's the main thing with Bachmeier. He's learned. Part of the problem has been with Bachmeier is he holds the ball too long. He takes a lot of sacks. He takes a lot of hits. So he's developed a little bit better in that department, and he has to stay healthy, of course, if they're going to have success. And they're also going to have a pretty good defense this year. So, yeah, Boise State's definitely going to contend for the title again after a 7-5 drop last year.
7-5 and no bowl game. And again, it wasn't because of their doing; it was because of COVID last year. That actually snapped. I believe it was a 18-year streak of going bowling for Boise State, but again, not their fault. They got a ton of starters coming back, 17 of them on tap this football season here. I think this is a bounce back year for the Boise State Broncos this football season here. Andy Avalos started out slow last year, but he finished 5-2. That was enough to get them that bowl bid here. They open up 3 of their first 4 games on the road. They can win. They could probably win all of those games. In fact, I'd be stunned if they come home to San Diego State and they're not 4-0 to do that. If they're 4-0 when they host San Diego State, they could well be on their way.
Well, that first game is going to be a good one because
Yes,
they're
well,
playing Oregon State, and Jonathan Smith is turning that program around, and that is going to be a really good opener for both teams. So I'm looking forward to that one.
yeah, that'll be a terrific. That'll be basically a season decider for both football teams.
Yes. Yeah.
Whoever wins that game's got the momentum. They're going to move forward and springboard forward from that. So that'll be a good gauge game for sure.
Couple of guys to keep an eye on: Scott Matlock, the defensive tackle for Boise, and also J.L. Skinner, their safety. He's a big guy, definitely an NFL prospect. Air Force. So what about the Air Force Falcons? Troy Calhoun, he just keeps going and going and going. It's been there a long time, and maybe he should never leave. When he does, it's probably going to be to retire. But they are going to be good again this year. Supposedly, the defense is going to be strong once again. And yeah, I mean, it's always hard to break these kind of programs down, but they got a good thing going right now. They're in a nice run.
They're in a real nice run, and look at that defense here. A step ladder down. 2018, 361 yards. Next year, 319 they allow. 305 last year, 294. They were a top 10 ranked team in overall defense last year.
Yep.
We're talking about Air Force here. We're not talking about Alabama. We're talking about Air Force. I know the competition is not the same, but it's still enough, I think, to keep this football team very competitive. My concern is they went from 3 wins to 10 last year. It's very, very difficult for teams to triple their wins and to be able to improve on that the following season. They're probably likely not going to do that, but I still got to put them on my watch list here. They're the type of team that you're either going to want to play on or avoid and not fade. I think the 7 or 8 wins will be great for Air Force's football season here, but not the 10 they had last year.
Vince Sanford, he's their main weapon on defense, the linebacker. Also, if they had a really good quarterback, they could be a very good team. But they just have an okay quarterback. He's okay. He's going to be a winner. They're going to win games. They're going to contend for the conference title. But he's nobody special. Their only really tough non-conference game, besides of course their academy games, will be the September 10th game against Colorado. They host Colorado, and that's of course a local type of matchup. So that'll be a nice one to see Air Force and Colorado take on each other.
Well, here's that stat that you want to refer to, though, Greg. You mentioned it earlier about another football team. And I mentioned that they won 10 games last year. The last 5 times that Air Force has won double-digit victories, the next year they've averaged 5.5 wins.
Oh, there you go.
There you
and
go.
That's the thing. That's why you can never tell what they're going to do. Especially you don't know about. Sometimes it doesn't even matter. Sometimes they're better off when they don't have experience coming back. So it's very hard, but I like that. That tells me maybe they are going to have a little bit more of an issue this year. Utah State, Blake Anderson. What a job Blake Anderson did at Utah State last year. And talk about the transfer portal working in your favor. He brings Logan Bonner over and from Arkansas State, and that worked so awesomely for the Aggies. Calvin Tyler at the running back position. Unfortunately, they lose Devin Tompkins, a big-time wide receiver for them. So that's going to hurt them. Matter of fact, I think they lose their top 2 or 3 receivers. So I'm a little bit concerned there. I think there'll be a drop-off offensively. They were dynamic, both running and passing. Defensively, though, they should be strong again, but not as strong because they lose some key players. So I think they're going to be okay because they're well coached. They got their quarterback back, but there's a handful of very key players offensively and defensively that are no longer there.
This is all about Blake Anderson here. And if I had a vote in the coaches poll last year, he would have got my vote for coach of the year in college football last year. Went from a one-win team to 11 wins last year. Very, very impressive in
Yeah.
everything they did. And one of the reasons that you could be a little bit concerned is, yeah, they're not really strong with returning experience this year, but look at their recruiting ranking. We put this in the Preview Guide magazine, okay? If you look at their rankings for the previous 2 years, 2 years back they ranked 122nd out of 130 teams. Last year they ranked 128th. But this year in the offseason, what did he do? He's ranks number 77. That's Blake Anderson. That's his doing. That's exactly what this man's going to do. He's going to bring talent into this football program here. I really like everything about him. I like him as a person, as a coach. I don't know if they're going to be able to match those 11 wins. Like, that's that little that little catamount that he's got to come over here, because one win to 11 is very, very difficult to have to repeat. But he will certainly be in a bowl game this year, and I will never want to fade Blake Anderson, especially if I have to lay points into him.
All right, and then the rest of the teams in this division: New Mexico State, Wyoming, and Colorado State. Colorado State, first-year head coach Jay Norville. So Norville leaves Nevada for Colorado State. Kind of an interesting choice, but I can see what he's doing. Definitely much easier to recruit Colorado State than it is Nevada. So that probably has something to do with it. He brings one of his quarterbacks from Nevada over with him. A young quarterback, though, so not a lot of experience, but apparently likes the kid, and that could wind up being the whole deal with Colorado State's offense this year. If the quarterback plays well defensively, they'll be okay, but it's going to take a couple of years for Jay Norville to get Colorado State to where Nevada was.
Unquestionably, he's got some building to do here. You take a look at this. They've only won 11 games in 4 years. There was a reason that they made an offer to him. They paid him good money. It's a much, much better locale to be in Fort Collins than it is Reno, Nevada. So I can understand that move. It's not, people think it might be more of a parallel or horizontal move, but I think it was a good move for him to do just
Yes.
that, because he can do only one thing with this football program, and that's improve it. We may not see him in a bowl game this year, but this program will be improved.
And Danny Gonzalez is going to look, it's a tough gig at New Mexico. He's on his third year. I think he's the right coach, but still going to take a little time. And Craig Bohl has done such a great job at Wyoming. I'm I'm really surprised that he loses these transfers the way that he does. I get it. Kind of tough if you're a really good player. I mean, do you want to keep playing in Wyoming when it's like snowing every week? So I understand that. Um, but I think because of that, this might be one of those years that he just doesn't have enough ammunition talent wise. But he's a really good coach.
He's a real good coach, Craig Bowl is. Before I get to him, though, Danny Gonzalez, you mentioned this will be his third year with the program, only 5 wins. And I feel honestly that if he doesn't improve this program, it'll be his third and final year with the program here. They opened up last year with 2 wins, and they went completely south after that. But the 2 wins, look at them, Greg. Houston Baptist and New Mexico State. If he hadn't won those games, there would have been an investigation.
Yeah.
I just don't see anything that I can like about this football program this year. There's nothing they can build on. They're not really experienced. A lot of experience coming back. They're very, very weak this year. I think this could be, like I say, the last year for Danny Gonzalez and
Yeah.
Craig
I was going to
Bohl.
say, by the way, that I think their only hope is that they could have a pretty good defense, and I believe they're going to be running the option. So we'll find out whether or not that's something that works out for them.
Well, yeah, time will tell with that football program. The thing about Wyoming and Craig Bowl, I really loved his hire. He was one of the really, really highly recruited assistants when he came to the football program here. And he's done about a 500 job. He's 45 and 50 since he's been with the football program here. Took him bowling last year after a 2-win season here. But what they're doing here is, you didn't see it last year defensively, but this team is really rock solid defensively, especially for the type of recruits that they get at this football program here. They get out recruited a lot inside this conference. People would much rather be playing at San Diego State or have the tradition, which is a Boise State per se. But Craig Bowl does a real, real nice job every year, and I got him bowling once again this football season as well.
Yeah, they lose Chad Muma, who was a big time linebacker
Yep.
for them last year. So that'll hurt them a little bit. Okay, now in the other division in the Mountain West, I think this is a tougher division. I think in the Mountain, uh, it's going to be, yeah, Utah State's probably third, but maybe they sneak into second if Air Force has a down year. But Boise State's comfortably at the top. But not because I think Boise State's that much better. I just think that they're benefiting from maybe a down year in the division. In the other division, Fresno State, Jeff Tedford is back, and that's always nice to see. Jeff Tedford back at Fresno State, and Jake Hayner's the quarterback, and he might be the best quarterback in the conference. He had some really good games. He had some really head scratching games, but now with Jeff Tedford there, it's going to be interesting to see what he could do with Hayner, whether or not he can improve Hayner enough that he could actually be a pro prospect. Jordan Mims, very good running back. Cropper, very underrated receiver. So overall, you have a team that's going to bring back enough players from last year's 10-win team, and this might be the team to beat overall in the Mountain West.
Jeff Tedford just won't go away. The guy, the guy likes coaching football. He's back for his second term, as you mentioned here. He's done a real nice job. Kalen DeBoer did a real good job with this football program here, but he's at Washington now. That's a big, big move up for him. So he had to take that job when that was offered to him.
Sure.
And I think Tedford will do a good job with this football program here. I think they're going to be one of the teams they're going to have to beat inside this division here. And a great stat in our preview guide magazine about Jeff Tedford. In his career, when he's coming off a loss and he's a dog of 6 or more points, he's 14-0 against the spread. That's a real good number to watch for them this particular football season here because he'll be taking 6 or more points in a couple of games.
All right. Probably the player to watch on defense is Evan Williams. He's one of the best DBs in the conference. Now San Diego State, speaking of defense, it's all about defense. Brady Hoke's Aztecs off a 12-win season, but their passing game is non-existent. So they're trying to fix that. They bring in Braxton Burmeister from Virginia Tech. Now, he may not be anybody, flashy, nothing. He's not Jake Hayner, but considering what San Diego State's had a quarterback over the last several years, he is a major, major improvement. And maybe that type of improvement is what San Diego State needs. They lose a couple of key players on defense, including Cam Thomas, who best defensive player in the entire conference. So that's going to be a big loss, but they always have good defenders. They've got linebackers like McDonald and McMorris. So once again, San Diego State's going to have a really good defense, and it'll be interesting to see whether or not Burmeister could be the missing ingredient to get San Diego State over the hump.
Well, I know one thing, Greg. They won't approach what they did last year. 12 wins, from 4 wins to 12 wins is just not going to happen with this football program, especially with Brady Hoke. I believe he's a coach that finds ways to lose more games than he wins.
Yeah.
To their credit, though, and I did this in our Mountain West Conference preview, which I'm going to post on our website here. They're all about defense in this conference, and San Diego State has been head and shoulders the best defensive team in the conference here. They've ranked in the top 25 each of the last 8 years, this football program has. So defensively, they lose some talent, as you mentioned, from last year, but he's going to have to hang his hat on in that defense and hope some way, somehow, this quarterback can help the offense.
Yeah, they're scheduled, too. They're going to go at Utah, at Boise State, at Fresno State. And they kick off the season against an Arizona team that's improving. That game's going to be
they're going to be sneaky this year, Arizona. Yep. Correct. Right.
San Jose State, you got to love the job Brent Brennan has done there. Naturally, they had a down season last season after winning the championship in 2020. It was a remarkable story, one of the better stories in that shortened season. They get a transfer quarterback in from Hawaii. I think they're going to be a little bit. By the way, and I also like the kid Nick Nash anyway. I know they lose the veteran quarterback Nick Starkel, but Nick Nash gives them some athleticism, so I think they're going to be okay. Maybe they don't miss Starkel as much as they would have without the kid from Hawaii. Defensively, though, that's what makes San Jose State intriguing. You mentioned defense in the conference. They got Kyle Harmon at linebacker. They got Cade Hall. They got Fahoko on the edges. So I think they're going to be strong again on defense, and I think they're going to rebound after a 5-win season and be a contender for the championship again.
Well, they'll be a contender, whether it's for the championship. I'd be surprised if they're not a winning team this year. You take a look at them quietly under the radar. they've gone 17-15 the last 3 years under Brett Brennan. That's a tremendous improvement from the team that he inherited. I mean, this football team was good for one win a year, the group that he took over. So he's done a real nice job with the program that way. He doesn't bring a lot back with experience as far as that's concerned. In his defense, they're going to have to, again, I use that same phrase, hang their hat on the defense here, because if the defense can hold the fort, I think this football program can make some noise.
UNLV. Now, this is a team that could be on the rise as well. It's a nice recruiting area, especially now that Vegas says the Raiders in town. Only 2 wins last year, but there were some nice close losses. There was some, they were competitive, so I like that. So yeah, look, it's going to take Marcus Arroyo another year or two to recruit even better players, but I like what I see. I think UNLV doubles their win total at the least. 4 wins, 5 wins. Maybe they sniff, maybe because this might be a little bit of a down year in the conference, they could actually sniff a bowl possibility. So I think they're on the rise.
I think there's two factors that are working for UNLV in their favor this year. Number one is the experience factor. They rank real high in returning experience this year. And number two, they went out and did a real nice job in the transfer portal here. They bring a Harrison Bailey in, a quarterback who was at Tennessee. And if you're a quarterback with Tennessee and you're not playing here, you had talent. They also bring a home run wide receiver in here in Ricky White from Michigan State. So if these two can get on the same page here, that can give them a real strong impetus, especially offensively, where they've been really dragging their tail here. They've gone backwards 4 years in a row offensively here. Any spark from the offense here can make this football team improve dramatically.
All right. Meanwhile, let's talk about the other teams in this division. You have Nevada and Hawaii. Nevada, Norval's gone, so there's going to be a drop off. They just will be. I mean, Carson Strong. You lose Dabbs, who was one of my sleepers in the draft. I put a report out a few weeks ago before training camp began, and he's now like the talk of Packer camp. So that's a big loss for Nevada, both Dabbs and Strong, and now Norval. So look, Ken Wilson's there, first-time head coach. It's going to take some time. They still have some decent players on offense and defense, so I don't think they're going to be terrible, but it's just not enough. There's just too many players that have transferred out. And Hawaii, the big story, of course, is Timmy Chang coming back to Hawaii. So it's more run and shoot, all that craziness at Hawaii, which you can never tell what's going to happen there if you have to take a trip there and the kids are distracted because, hey, I'm in Hawaii. Do I have to play a football game today? So, so I think it's exciting that Timmy Chang's going back to Hawaii.
It's exciting, but the fact of the matter is that there's no team in college football this year that has the fewer amount of returning experience in Hawaii. They rank dead last in experience. Yeah. So Timmy's going to have to pull out his old playbook and maybe even take a snap or two behind.
Maybe. Yes. Hopefully he's got eligibility left
for this program. In Nevada, we talked about them earlier on in the show here. I think this football team is going to have to build from the ground up here. I talked about before about how they led the country in turnovers last year. That's gone. Carson Strong's gone. Everything about this football program is gone here. I think Nevada is going to really struggle this year.
Sun Belt time. And when you talk about the Sun Belt, you always have to start with Appalachian State. And that's what we'll do. And we'll start in the East. And Appalachian State should be a strong team again. Year 3 for Sean Clark. He gets Chase Bryce back, who's one of the top quarterbacks in the conference. They got the duo at running back. They got Nate Noel and Cameron Peoples. So they're going to be strong again offensively. You know they're always going to be strong on defense. Schedule-wise, are they going to be able to pull off one of those upsets? They were able to do that last year. Actually, it was, what was it, last year? No, that's right. They almost pulled it off because I remember taking App State in that game against Miami. It was a really close loss, but they covered the spread. This year, they host North Carolina. How about that? North Carolina letting Appalachian State, I guess it must be a home and home. So that's a big opening game for Appalachian State to host North Carolina. Then they go to Texas A&M in week 2. A tough schedule for App State, but they're going to be one of the top dogs once again in the conference.
Go back in there, look at this football program here, Greg. They're all about winning. They've won over 90 games the last 9 years. They have to be the team to beat, if for no other reason, because they play winning football on the mountain in Asheville or Boone. Boone's really right outside of Asheville, North Carolina.
Yeah, it's not too far from me.
Well, I know that because I was married there, and it's not too far from you.
Oh
Exactly.
yeah. Uh-huh.
There you go. But they are indeed always a quality football program here, and there will be again a quality football program again this year. They continue to keep recruiting real well. They don't rank real strong with returning experience or starters that way this year, but tradition is what it's all about with the Appalachian State, and they have to be a team that is going to have to be a team to beat inside the Sun Belt East Division this year.
Unfortunately, they can't be like a group of five buster because they have to go to Texas A&M.
Yes, they do.
It's too bad. That's just too tough of an ask. Like if they would have beaten North Carolina, which is possible, and run the table, maybe, but not because Look, hey, at least you have a chance. You go to Texas A&M and beat them, and then nobody can hold you out of the playoffs if you run the table. But they're not going to beat Texas A&M.
You don't think they are,
No, I don't think so. But hey, you know what? They'll probably be in the game because they're very talented. So they're not going to get blown out. That's for sure. All
Well,
right.
yeah, A&M's got Miami of Florida on deck beyond that. Now they're not going to look past Appalachian State for the Miami of Florida. If they had a Southeast Conference team that would possibly be an upset. But don't be surprised. Bigger upsets have happened before in the
Sure.
world of college football.
Oh, absolutely. So I could see them definitely. What do you think the spread would be in a game like that? Something like 18,
I,
17?
I would say the high teens. Yes,
Yeah.
the high teens.
Okay, Marshall is in the Sun Belt Conference. So just that, you have to keep that in mind when you're talking about level of competition. Even though the Sun Belt now is better than the Conference USA. Wouldn't you say that?
I would say that because the USA is, they're depreciating and the Sun Belt's getting better.
Yeah.
A little bit of a raid on the conference USA and the Sun Belt's going to benefit from, especially with Marshall being now in the conference.
Yeah, so Marshall and Marshall Appalachian State that'll be a nice rivalry
Yes.
eventually. So, but yeah, so Marshall, it's year 2 for Charles Huff's squad. He loses his quarterback though. I'm not sure that's a big deal because Columbia is now going to be their quarterback. I believe he was a Texas Tech kid. Um, overall, Ali is their top playmaker, the running back. He's probably up there as the top running back in the entire conference. I really like the players they have on defense, but I don't know if they get good quarterback play, they have a chance to be a top dog in this conference. But I'm not so sure that that's going to happen.
Well, what I really like here about what they're doing here is Charles Huff, their head coach. He wins 7 games last year. Nice job, goes bowling, does the good things. But more importantly, he slayed it in recruiting last year. They ranked 120th in the country the year before. This year they ranked 58th.
Wow.
Yes, that's a huge jump for a football program like this. And if they do show signs of success this football season, you can attribute it largely to what Charles Huff is doing with the program.
Marshall will be at Notre Dame week 2, so we'll find out how good Marshall is in a couple of weeks after the season begins. Coastal Carolina, the Chanticleers, and Shadwell has done a tremendous job with this program. I understand that chances are there could be a drop because there's a lot of players that have left, but 2 things work in their favor. I think Shadwell has done such a good job recruiting that we're not talking about recruiting in the SEC. So I think he's done a good enough job recruiting that they can reload Sunbelt. And when you stick Grayson McCall at quarterback, and he's your guy every game, nobody's better on this. He, to me, and I don't know, I think he's around 6 or 7 right now as far as the NFL. I have him near the top. He might be one of my top 3 quarterback prospects in the NFL draft. I love this kid, and I think he's going to be a difference maker. I don't think the Coastal Carolina should be ranked any lower than 2nd behind App State in that division. I think it's Coastal Carolina, App State, and Coastal Carolina will host App State on November 3rd. Unfortunately, Coastal does not play a big FBS opponent. Their top FBS opponent is Virginia.
Well, you mentioned Grayson McCall here. A little bit of Malik Willis like in him, but he does a greater job of protecting the football. Only 3 interceptions last year. That's terrific. 27 touchdown passes and 3 picks. He's the real deal, as you mentioned
Oh,
here.
he's
And
better than Willis. He's better than
yes,
Willis.
yeah.
He's the real
Well,
deal. Yeah,
his career path is kind of what I'm really
absolutely.
relating to here. You've also got a football program here that is improving tremendously defensively. Look at their last 4 football seasons. 4 years ago, 452 yards a game. They sliced that 100 yards, and now they're 341 last year, 351 the year before, and 387. It's all Jamie Chadwell, and it's all because of the recruiting that he's doing. His recruiting has gotten better each and every year the past 4 football seasons here. What they're doing is not a fluke here right now with this football program here. And as you mentioned, that game against Appalachian State, I think, will be for the marbles to win this division.
All right, and then other teams in this division. There's two other. Actually, if you look at it, this is a really nice division. But there's a couple of teams that I like here. Georgia State, we mentioned. Sean Elliott's done a fantastic job with the Panthers. Very underrated program. Keep in mind, this was the team that should have knocked off Auburn last year at Auburn. Uh, their quarterback situation is still fine. They get a senior there. Their defense is really the strength of this team. A lot of guys returning on defense, key guys. So 8-win team last year. I could see that again this year, and I definitely think that they are a contender. I think they're right there, and they're going to be hosting Coastal Carolina, and then they got to travel to App State. I actually have Georgia State over Marshall. I think they're right up there, just behind Coastal and App State in that division.
Well, the good news is they bring a lot of experience back here for this football program here, and a lot of that. They also hit the transfer portal pretty hard. Well, in fact, I got to reverse that. Okay, only 2 commits in the transfer portal. So it's the job that Sean Elliott's doing here, and what a great job that he's doing with this football program here. Very, very highly respected when he came in here. He's got 3 bowl eligible teams here the last 3 football seasons. Like you say, they could be a real sleeper team inside this conference this year. Their defense is one of those ones that's that step ladder defense gets better and better and better. If they can hold this defense to a sub 400 yard defense here this year, they can make a little bit more noise than people expect this year.
Yeah, and we're gonna know a lot about them early at South Carolina, at Army, hosting North Carolina, and hosting Coastal Carolina. Those are 4 of their first 5 games, so that is a tough schedule. You know what? I think they host North Carolina. That's a scary game for North Carolina. So and good for North Carolina. I mean, kudos for I don't know when they set that up, but kudos for North Carolina to go to Appalachian State and Georgia State to open up their season. I mean, how awesome is that to let the little guys get a chance?
Well, you got to love that. It was a home and home in that series here for Georgia State and North Carolina this year. But you say North Carolina has to do that. They're the ones to agree to do that. And that's all Mac Brown. Mac Brown's all about leveling the playing field, making it college football an experience for the players here. And I love that. I love the fact that he's going to take his troops this year into Atlanta to play Georgia State.
Yeah, because most of the time it's all right. We'll pay you, and you come to our stadium, and that's it.
Right.
But I like it. They get the home and home deal. Old Dominion, another team to keep an eye on. The former Penn State head coach has done a tremendous job in just a very short period of time. I loved what they did last year. I was on board with those last several games. They were a money favor for me. They won their last 5 games to become bowl eligible and get there. Unfortunately, they didn't win the bowl game, but still, it was a nice story. They've got some talent on offense. Jennings and Watson and Kunz, the tight end, by the way, who it was a Penn State tight end, came over with their coach. Defensively, they lose a couple of key guys, but I think they're going to be fine. And this is why I think this is a very tough division. This is another team that is potentially going to be bowl eligible again.
Yeah, they're a football program that had 2 different seasons, the beginning and the end last year. I think they were 1-7 to start, and like you mentioned, 5-0 straight up end of the spread to close the year. Ricky Rennie's done a great job with this football program here right now. He's got them back on the map. They got 17 starters back, 10 on offense here. This is a football team that I think inside the conference and the division, nobody's going to want to play this year. They're a sneaky good football team.
And by the way, Kuntz, the tight end, was one of the top tight end prospects in all of college football when he came out a few years back with Penn State. So they opened the season at home against Virginia Tech. You smell upset?
Upset.
Virginia Tech, new coaching staff.
Yeah, possibly. Why not? I mean, first of all, it's a state rival. You know, they're the little kids in the block. The redheaded stepchild, Old Dominion is feeling awfully good about themselves, and Virginia Tech could well look past this football program here. That could well be an upset in the making.
Yeah, actually, they may not want to look past them because the last time Virginia Tech played at Old Dominion, they were a 27-point favorite, and Old Dominion beat them outright.
Oh boy!
Then last year, no, 2 years ago at Virginia Tech, it was a 14-point game, 28-point spread. So I don't think Virginia Tech's going to overlook Old Dominion.
Well, they're a 4-point favorite, so it's not like
there you go.
It's a given.
No more 28-point spreads.
No. Vegas respects Old Dominion. That's exactly what that tells you.
And then the other two teams, Georgia Southern, Clay Helton at head coach. So you like that. He's already brought in a ton of transfers, so they're going to be competitive and better. It's just too tough of a division, so it'll take a year or two, but they're going to be better. James Madison is the one that's going to be intriguing because they have been like a powerhouse FCS program. They come into the FBS now at the Sun Belt, and you just know that they're going to be competitive. So that's the again, I love this division. I think top to bottom, when you can have Clay Helton coaching the team that might be projected as the worst team in the division, you know you have a tough division.
First of all, Georgia Southern is what we call a mission team. Okay, that's that team that went bowling 3 years in a row and had that losing season. They play with a vengeance the next year. That'll be Georgia Southern this football season with Clay Helton. You know, you might not have liked him at Southern Cal, but the guy's a winner. He knows how to win football games. They could be very sneaky good this football season here, and they're very, very experienced this year. Georgia Southern is on the charts here. They ranked number 6 overall in the country in returning experience, so they can make some noise this football season here. I wouldn't be at all surprised about that. And you mentioned James Madison. I mean, my goodness, what a coup it is for James Madison to open up in this conference here. You would have thought basically that they'd have gone independent to open up, but no, they're going to go right into the conference. They're not eligible to win the conference. They can't do that just yet, but they'll play like every game like it's an FCS championship game because that's all they know how to do at James Madison is win football games. You got look at their wins here: 19, 28, 42 wins in the last 4 years for this football program here. They're not going to be intimidated by anybody at all in any game they play this year.
Yeah, and Kirk Cignetti, who will be in his 4th season, so his record 33-5. That's
pretty nice. That's real nice. Yep.
Yeah. So
that's like it's like Chris Kleiman when he was at
yes.
North Dakota State. Exactly that same kind of a record.
Yeah, and they'll start with Middle Tennessee at home. They could be 2-0 start the season before they travel to App State, and if they start 2-0 and go to App State, that'd be a nice game.
Do they catch the App State after A&M?
It could be a couple of weeks after A&M.
Yeah.
So I don't know whether or not.
Yeah, that's true because there's a week off between Norfolk State and Appalachian State. So
they play Troy in between.
Okay, so that not quite exactly off of that game.
But James Madison, at least they get a bye before App State, and App State has to play Troy
to get ready. Exactly.
Troy's not a pushover. We can actually begin with Troy in the other division because Troy will have a new head coach. So John Sumrall is their coach. Chip Lindsey gone, so Sumrall takes over. He's on the defensive side with Kentucky, and we know how good Kentucky's been lately. They needed a change because this used to be the dominant team in the old Sun Belt when it was a little smaller and less competitive, but still there's talent here, especially on defense. There's loads of talent on defense, and you have a defensive coach. So the question is, can they find a little bit of offense?
I believe they can. This is a football program that's won 5 games 3 years in a row, 5-5-5. They make this nice coaching change coming in here. I think there's some things to like about this program here. They could be a little bit sneaky good this football season here. Their defense last year improved 70 yards a game last year in that 5-win season compared to the 5 wins the year before. So the defense, I think, will be rock solid for them. They've got a defensive-oriented head coach. They're a football team that could enough maybe win their 6 games and become bowl eligible.
Very tough first 5 games, including Mississippi and App State and Western Kentucky on the road to start off for Summerall. Louisiana. So the Billy Napier run is over, and what a successful run it was. That's why he's at Florida. So this team won what? 34 games in 3 years and only 5 losses.
Yep, 34-5. It's almost like that Signetti coaching record.
Yeah, that's right.
Right.
Except Napier did it in the FBS.
Yes.
So Michael DeSormo takes over, and look, you're going to have a down situation here. It's just they were just too good. Players have transferred. Some of the players transferred and followed Napier to Florida. Most of the talent appears to be on defense, returning talent. But yeah, I just think it's one of those situations, and you get this a lot with these group of 5 programs when that coach has that run and then he leaves, unless he leaves the other coach stocked, then there's a drop off. And Billy Napier did not leave.
No, he left the cupboard bare is
Yeah.
what he left. Took the coaches, the players are gone.
He took everybody. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. There's a reason that he took that job because he knew he would have struggled a little bit this year, especially by his standard per se. The good thing about DeSormo is he's a former Raging Cajun all-conference quarterback, okay? He was an assistant coach on this football team here. He became an interim coach for the Cajuns. When he left, Napier did. He coached that last bowl game for this football team. So there's a lot of friendliness, a lot to like about that. But it's a rebuilding process here for them this year, and they rank near the dead bottom as far as returning experience goes. Like I said, that cupboard is very, very bare for the Raging Cajuns this year.
What's going to help them is the division. See, this is the thing I don't like about the Sun Belt this year. They shouldn't have divisions this year because all the good teams are in one division, and the cupboard is almost bare in this division because you're going to have a down year from Lafayette. You have a first-year coach at Troy. Troy might actually be the team to beat in this division.
They might.
And you got Southern Miss and South Alabama and Arkansas State and Louisiana Monroe and Texas State. It's just, Southern Miss, second year under Will Hall. It did not go well in year 1 with 3 wins. Their quarterback situation was a mess. I don't think they're going to improve that much. South Alabama, Womack is back for a second year. Maybe I could see South Alabama being an intriguing team in this division. Texas State, Spividal is in his 4th season. I would give them an opportunity to improve. Arkansas State, of course, losing Blake Anderson is a big loss, and Butch Jones takes over for year 2, so maybe there's something there. And Terry Bowden, you love what Terry Bowden did last year at ULM, beating Troy as a 23-point dog, beating Liberty as a 33-point dog. Good for Terry Bowden. So out of all those teams, I don't know, I'd probably say Texas State might intrigue me the most, maybe even South Alabama. What about you? Who do you like out of that group?
Well, I think that group is you could put a blanket over that group, is what you could do. And whoever emerges. I don't know if ULM has got 2 good years in a row. I think Terry Bowden kind of snuck up.
I know, and they only won 4 games last year.
Yeah. And, to ask them to do the same thing again this year, going into a couple of revenge spots, I don't think it's going to work for that program this year. Texas State might be a football team that could make a little bit of noise this football season here this year. But again, only because they bring a lot of returning experience back, and they won just 4 games last year, and they've inched their way up from 2 wins to 4.
Yeah.
Spavital's in his 4th year now. He's going to have to win here this year.
It's time. It's time to win.
It's time to win. So, with the experience coming back here, they could end up being that team that breaks through to the other side.
All right, so there you go. That's the Sun Belt. Now let's talk Conference USA football as we get down to the final two conferences in the group of five. And we start, this is a conference that does not have divisions. So Texas San Antonio, the UTSA Roadrunners. Jeff Traylor did an amazing job in just his second year. It was a dream season for the Roadrunners. I mean, what a story they were. And there's a decent amount of players returning. They're going to lose some key guys on defense, but offensively, they get their quarterback returning. They do lose their big time running back, but they have weapons galore in the receiving department and the quarterback. Yeah, they've lost some guys, but to me, I still think Texas San Antonio is the team to beat. I know UAB is right up there. It's neck and neck, UAB and UTSA, but I think UTSA deserves the benefit of the doubt as the team to beat.
I got to make them the team to beat if for no other reason. Bill Clark has resigned at UAB
Oh, he
for
did.
health reasons. Yes,
When did this
exactly.
happen?
About 3 weeks ago.
Really,
Okay.
I did not know that. Okay,
Yeah.
that is a big
Okay.
loss.
Yeah, big loss. I mean, the team revolved around him. This coach here at UTSA, Jeff Traylor, you can mark this down. He will be coaching at a Power Five conference, most likely the Big 12, if not next year, the year after here. He's probably the best uh, group of five coach that's out there. I mentioned Blake Anderson before, but
Yeah.
he's been around the block. Jeff Traylor's a new kid on the block, okay? And he was a coach of the year in the state of Texas. And look at this job that he's done with this football program here. They weren't just good last year; they were dominating last football season here.
Hey,
And they
how
were
about if it doesn't work out for Sarkeesian?
well. There you go. I mean, that's a natural, okay? With all the pressure on Sarkeesian as well. And I want to ask you, who was the one coach that voted Texas number one in the college football poll?
I
They
was
have
going to say when we talk about them, I was going to go, you know what? There's some exciting players and blah, blah, blah. But, let's not get carried away. And now they really can't get carried away.
Oh my God. I got to think the coach was, I got to think it was Brett Venables from Oklahoma.
Probably, right?
Yeah,
That's a
only
good one.
to throw a little bone to Texas,
Well, it's not time yet. Yeah,
take
they're at
the
least a
heat
year
off of
away.
him.
Yeah.
Right. But as far as Trailer goes, this guy is all about winning football games. He's, like I mentioned, 60 school team records that he set. My goodness. Uh, he's been an assistant at SMU in Arkansas and Texas. He's been around.
Texas. Yeah.
He's been there before. Texas. There you go again. Okay, they got a really good quarterback in Frank Harris, who over 3,700 yards and 33 touchdowns last year. They have to be the team to beat this year in the conference,
Yeah.
USA.
Franklin is an underrated receiver. Keep an eye on him. He had a big year last year and will have another big year this year. And Texas San Antonio will host Houston week 1. That's a really nice matchup. And that is a really fun place to watch a football game at the Alamo Dome that they have there. So that's going to be a crazy, environment. That's a dangerous game for Houston. And then they go to Army and Texas. Just imagine if they upset Texas at Texas. You think
Uh,
Jeff Trail will be the head coach in 2023?
I think Texas will sign him on the spot.
So that's a hell of a way to start the season for Texas San Antonio. But UAB, that is a major loss for Bill Clark. Now, sometimes you can get the whole thing. The coach leaves, and I'm assuming one of the assistants stays as the head coach now, and they can run some sort of emotional high and let's win this for Bill Clark and all that kind of stuff. But if Bill Clark doesn't come back, and who knows, since it's a health thing, hopefully it's just a 1 year thing. And if it is, okay. But this year, that's the only thing I could say is maybe they could use it for some sort of inspiration because it's still a very talented football team.
He's been advised by doctors to call it a career, so I don't think he's going to risk his health for something like that, especially for the rebuild job that he did with this program here. That it was monumental with what he did with the program here, and we always talk about them being in the running because of what Bill Clark does, how he recruits, and everything about this UAB program here. They would have been in the conversation here again this year, but unfortunately, that being the case, we got to drop them down a notch or two.
Yeah, the quarterback comes back, Hopkins. They got one of the best running backs in the conference in McBride. So offensively, they're going to be okay, and they're always very good on defense. UAB will be at Liberty in week 2, and they host Texas San Antonio later in the year. Um, but those are definitely still two of the top teams in the division. UTEP, you got Dana Dimmel doing a nice job at UTEP. Finally got over the hump last year, winning 7 games. They were able to go to a bowl. Didn't win the game, but they were competitive. They got some key players coming back. They got the quarterback back. They got one of the more talented running backs in the conference returning, and they got a lot of key players on defense. They haven't recruited yet to the point where they're Texas San Antonio. So I don't know if they still need a couple. I think at that point it'll be interesting to see if they can get to Texas San Antonio's level. But I think they're in a good spot. They should return again to a bowl. Um, I don't think though they're on par with the top two dogs in that division yet.
I don't think they are either, Greg, and they kind of fit into a guideline that I use for automatic play against football teams. And in a nutshell, basically what it is they had a 7-win bowl season last year. Before that, they won a total of 5 football games the previous 3 years. It's sort of like a devil in disguise. They broke through. Now, can they repeat that this year after wallowing in the depths of shallow water previously? And I think it'll be difficult for them to one become a bowl team this year, and I think they will take that step back this year.
Okay. Also, Western Kentucky. What a big year it was last year for Tyson Helton and the Hilltoppers, but they ran into that Hilltop. They ran into that Roadrunner bandwagon, and that couldn't get over the hump. It was a very entertaining Conference USA championship game, though. But all those top key guys are gone. The quarterback is now playing for the New England Patriots. Matter of fact, their offensive coordinator, they had that crazy thing where they recruited the coordinator. What was it, from Sam Houston, I believe, and
Yes.
he brings in big time receivers and big time zappy quarterback, and they have this big time offensive season, and they almost win the conference, and now all those guys are gone. They all either graduated or transferred. So Helton's kind of left all by himself. They still have some decent players, but they also lost a big boy on defense with Malone now playing for the Atlanta Falcons.
Well, here's what bothers me is they got the job done last year, despite the fact that they took a huge plunge in college recruiting last year. 139th in the country. That's like not even on the charts. But what they did, as you mentioned here, is they went to Sam Houston State and brought all these flyboys in, Barry Zappi and company, and they
Actually,
reignited
it's Houston Baptist.
Houston Baptist. Okay, and rejuvenated this football program here. He's gone. And so too are their chances of repeating that way this year.
Yeah.
I understand Tyson Helton will probably do a pretty good job. This will be his 4th year, but they have to regress this year, Greg, especially after the year they had with Barry Zappi gone. It was all about Barry Zappi last year.
Yeah, I think it's one of those things where I give him to see how he can perform this year as a coach, and if he doesn't perform all that well, I got to be rethinking whether or not he's the right guy. Um, but anyway, they're still going to be competitive. I don't see them where they were anywhere close to where they were last year with all that talent gone. Still, they're going to be one of the upper echelon teams in the conference. North Texas, they used to be one of the top teams back in the old days. Matter of fact, wasn't North Texas in the Sun Belt with Troy? Weren't they part of that? Like,
I believe they were, yeah,
yeah,
and
they used to be
that
the
was
dominant teams.
they're one of the better teams. Exactly right.
Yeah. So
Yep.
it's been a while. Seth Luttrell, remember, just a few years ago, he was a hot coaching hire.
He sure
And,
was.
and then it just, I forget what year it was. I think it was 2019. Then he had 2 bad years in a row, and all of a sudden, everybody started running the spread, and he was just another coach. But they had a nice run at the end of the season last year, winning their last, what was it, 4 or 5 games to become bowl eligible. So that was a nice story. I think they can carry that over again this year, but maybe another 500 team. Maybe they could end up better than Western Kentucky and probably compete along with UTEP around that spot.
Well, I might think that Seth Luttrell made a deal with the devil at some point last year. They started out 1-7, And as you mentioned, he was a coach that everybody wanted, and he even refused to leave the program. And he had an offer to a Power Five program and didn't take it in 2019 after he won 9 games. For whatever reason, he stuck around. And then he wins 4 games, and he wins 4 games, and last year he starts out 1-7. That's when the deal was cut with the devil. Okay,
Uh-oh.
because they did close out real well last year. It was salvaging for him, and if he comes back and has a winning season this year, and he can because he's got a lot of experience coming back this football season here, number 13 in the country overall in returning experience, he could put himself back on that map. I've liked him as a coach before, but you say he was out coached in those years that he didn't perform well. So this is going to be a huge key make or break it year here for Seth Luttrell and the Mean Green.
Yeah, the offense will be fine, as you mentioned. The defense, that's the problem. The defense lost, and they're not more of a defensive team anyway. So yeah, they're going to have to win a lot of high-scoring games this year. And they opened the season at UTEP, so right there.
Yep.
I mean, you may have to beat UTEP. That might have to be a game that you win in order to see if you can climb the ladder in that conference, in that division. Okay. Next up, let's talk about just a couple more teams. A few more of these teams. Florida Atlantic, Willie Taggart. What do you think about FAU at this point? Because it's been a very strange program with the coaches, and I don't know. Taggart's his, he's going all over the place. He's like he was like the hot coaching hire at Oregon, and that was a disaster. And now he's at FAU. He's back in this kind of a group of five setting, and things have not gone very well the last couple of years, including last year.
No, so what has he done? He's gone out and he hit the transfer portal real hard this year. He brought in the top ranked transfer portal players inside the conference this year because he realizes he's up against it here right now.
Hey, come on to Boca Raton, Florida, and hang out with the chickies.
That's right. South Beach in the weekends. You'll like everything that's going on down here.
Yeah.
But he does have 15 other starters coming back. He's got N'Kosi Perry. He was a starter at Miami of Florida. So he's got some tools to work with here this football season here. Pair of 5-win seasons here. In his third year, he opens up with a pair of 5-win seasons in his first 2. He's going to have to win this football season here, or I think Willie Taggart will be out looking for another job this year. The heat is on Willie this year.
Yeah. Also, Middle Tennessee State, Rick Stockstill just keeps going. Year 17 for Stockstill. I don't know. Isn't it time to move on? Chase Cunningham, that's the guy they have to keep him healthy this year. If they can keep him healthy, they might be an intriguing team.
I can say this, Greg. I can say that I can remember for as long as I can go back, I always was a huge Rick Stockstill fan, but I keep saying it and saying it and saying it. And he's like around, like you say, forever, his 17th year.
Yeah.
Doing it. And mediocre teams, they don't challenge for a championship. They very rarely get blown out of the water. I think their 3-win season 2 years ago was largely because of the COVID. And he'll probably be a competitive football team again this year, probably go bowling again this year, but certainly nobody that's going to be a threat inside the conference this season.
No, and it's going to be tough because they're going to be battling teams like FAU and even Charlotte. And Will Healy, this is a big year for Healy because last year was a little bit disappointing. A lot of expectations going into last year, and it didn't really work out. Chris Reynolds is back at quarterback. They have 2 of the best receiver combos in the entire conference in Dubose and Tucker. They got a couple of players on defense. So this has to be a bowl year, no question. If it's not, Healy might be gone. I can see Charlotte kind of hanging out and being like a top 3 or 4 team in this conference if all goes well.
They got a little bit of a wobbly defense here. Okay, they're one of these stepladder defenses has gotten worse and worse and worse, as time has gone on. But and you got no help from the transfer portal here as well. So last year's team had the largest majority of team starts from seniors. Okay, that's not good news. Okay, because they're gone. So what he has is relatively no experience at all coming back here. Combine that with the fact that he didn't do well in the transfer portal here, I think he's up against it this particular football season here. It's his 4th year with the program, won 7 games his first year. That was great. He's only won 7 games combined since then. I think Will Healy's on the hot seat this year as well.
Yeah, and they got to learn to win on the road, too. They're just a really bad road team.
Yep.
Louisiana Tech, Sonny Cumby is now taking over the program. That makes sense. That's a good hire for Louisiana Tech, but it'll probably take him a couple of years. He doesn't really have a whole lot of talent uh, just to start with, but it's probably not a bad hire.
No, a good hire. I think Skip Holtz's days were over. They were probably not listening to him after the long tenure that he had there, and they were slipping. There's no question about that. From 10 wins to 5 to 3. So Cumbie will be a fresh voice in the locker room for sure. The losing season last year snapped a 7-year bowl streak for this program.
Wow,
So that
yeah.
makes them a mission team. They'll probably play with a big chip or so on their shoulder this year. And with Sonny Cumbie here, I think this football program can do just that. They can reverse things and double their win total from 3 to 6 this year.
Rice and FIU round out the conference. FIU gets Mike McIntyre. And we know you can recruit in Florida. Whether Mike McIntyre can or not, but we know that there's a lot of players to recruit from. So I think, knowing his track record, he'll get the job done there in a few years. Not this year, but in time. And as far as Rice is concerned, I'm sticking at least one more year with Mike Bloomgren because I think he's a good coach. I think it's the perfect coach for Rice. They've had a lot of injury issues, especially at quarterback. That's kind of held them back. But I think maybe this is the year that they make a run and get back to bowling. Nothing more than that. But I'm going to say maybe this is the year they could sniff a bowl.
Let me get to Rice in just a second here. As far as Florida International is concerned here, Mike McIntyre is the fixer, okay? He's the guy from San Jose State that built that program from nothing to a good team. Uh, a program that won 11 games. He inherited a 2-win program, and they won 11 games 3 years later. He's in here to do just that with this program. Butch Davis really died on the vine with this program here. His first 3 years, he had pretty good years. Then he went 1-16 the last 2 years. He was at odds with the school, with the university. They just didn't want to fund the program, and he had his fill. It was a mutual departure that way. I think McIntyre can do some good things for this program here. But before you jump off the high board, remember they've only won one game in the last 2 years, and I think you got to watch him build this program here. Make this be his starting point, and next year we'll talk a little bit more about how Mike McIntyre can get this team into a bowl game.
And he's got a really good receiver. Tyrese Chambers might be one of the actual top players in the entire conference.
Exactly. And you mentioned Rice as well. The Rice Owls were a football program that last year they doubled their win total from 2 to 4. Mike Bloomer was finally, I mean, he's in the hot seat, no doubt about it. 4 years, he got 11 wins and 31 losses, so he's going to have to get the job done. He needs to smell a winning season. Can he do it here this year? I don't know. I don't know. There's nothing to build on. It's not like he went out and he killed it or slayed it in the transfer portal. It's not like he's got a ton of returning talent coming back here this year. 5 years, no winning seasons here. Again, all the pressure here is on him. He did have a strong returning cast of underclassmen last season here that played, though. That's usually a good sign where you play those young kids and they become more experienced the next year. If that card plays out well for him, he could save his job.
And what was good too is the last 5 games of the season, they upset UAB on the road as a 23-point dog. They lose in overtime. They lose in overtime. They lost to Western Kentucky, one of the best teams in the conference. They lose by 10 at UTEP, a bowl team, and they beat Louisiana Tech. They upset Louisiana Tech. That's a pretty good way to end their season.
It's a real good way to end their season. I'm sure Bloomgren's going to remind them just of that, how they had basically a tale of two seasons, the first half and the second half, and the second half played a lot better than the record indicated.
All right, it's time to talk MAC football. And there's two divisions. You got the West, you got the East. Let's start, first of all, in the East with Miami. We mentioned Miami before, that this is they're going through a nice few years here under Chuck Martin. It's been what now? He's ninth year, but if you look at it, most of the winning has come recently. Uh, just even over the last 4 years, he has not had a losing season. He gets his battle-tested quarterback Brett Gabbert back, who might be one of the top quarterbacks. Well, he is one of the top quarterbacks in the conference, maybe the best. So that's a big addition. That's a big player to have returning. Uh, the issue is they have some key guys that are not coming back on defense, and they're more of a defensive first team. But you got to like the fact that Gabbert's back at quarterback, and this is a team that was right there at the end of the season to try and play in the MAC championship game.
I think this could be the team to beat inside the East Division in the MAC this year. Chuck Martin has done a really, really nice job with this program here, especially after the slow start. And he inherited a program that had absolutely nothing working for it. Now he's got this football team here. They've been bowl eligible now 3 of the last 4 years. The only year they weren't was in the COVID year when they played 3 games. So you can give them a pass on that. And look what they did last year, last football season here. They won 7 games. They went bowling, but they were only 1-4 in their 5 one-score football games. Yet they still won 7 games. Okay,
Yeah.
so
they lost by 5 at Minnesota.
There you go. You turn that around, 1-4. Make it, give them 2 more wins. Make it,
9 wins.
Make it 3-2, and it's a 9-win program here. I think he's got a lot working for him here this year. He's got some good talent coming back here. The defense sparkled last year. They improved on both sides of the football last year, offensively and defensively. And with this head coach, again, they're the team to beat.
Yeah, if you look at it, not only the Minnesota game, they lost by 1 at Eastern Michigan. They lost by 2 at Ohio, and those are their only. No, and they lost in overtime the last game of the season at Kent State for a chance to go to the championship game.
Yep.
And they lose in overtime on that rule where you have to go for 2.
Yep.
And they couldn't get the 2, and they lose. And those were their losses at the end of the season. They had 5 wins, 3 losses. The 3 losses were by a combined 4 points. So
that's what I'm saying. They just didn't get the breaks in those 1-score football games. If that stuff evens out the next year, they could end up easily surpassing last year's win total.
And the team they beat, Kent State, they have an edge over Kent State now because Kent State has a lot of those players that were shining for them last year, including Dustin Crum. You lose Dustin Crum at Kent State, and that's like losing Dan Marino at Pitt. It is a major loss, but Sean Lewis has done a really good job with the Golden Flashes.
I'm going to say this one thing, though, that they're going to host Kent State coming off of 3 away games. It's their homecoming game. The problem there is they're going to have the revenge, but they're going to be a big favorite in a homecoming game, and that's a no-no. You don't want to lay double digits with home favorites in homecoming games, so just keep that in mind when the game comes up.
Oh, when they play Miami of Ohio again?
No, when they play Kent State.
Yeah, okay. When those 2 teams play each other, Kent State and Miami?
Yes, yeah. When Kent State when Miami hosts Kent State,
okay,
Miami will be a double-digit favorite.
So keep an eye on that as a negative.
So as a negative, exactly, because it's a homecoming game, exactly.
And also, if you look at it, the previous games they'll be on the road. The other 2 games too. And I believe it's their second game in the division. But that'll be interesting. The homecoming.
You could say it's a third row game because they played Cincinnati at Paul Brown Stadium before that in Cincinnati. Then they open up at Kentucky, so they got a little bit of a trek. Yeah. You take a look, 4 of their first 5 games are away from home. So, but watch the momentum build for this football team by the end of the season.
Yeah, the rest of the division, again, Kent State's a defending champs, but when you get Crum out of the picture, it is a huge drop-off. They lost a lot of other players as well. I like what Sean Lewis is doing, but I don't know how they're going to – I mean, the only good thing I think that they have going for them to compete with Miami is the fact that Buffalo has a second-year coach, and of course – Lance is gone. We spoke highly about Lance, who's now at Kansas. And Buffalo is just not going to be the same, I think. And you got Ohio also. Solich is gone. I don't think they're going to be the same. So just with those specific teams, Ohio, Buffalo, and Kent State, I don't know. I mean, I actually might favor Ohio out of those 3 to maybe compete with Miami.
Probably so. In fact, I think if you look at their season win total, they're the second choice behind Miami to be just that. Ohio is just not quite the same team that they used to be with Frank Solich there. that spark is gone per se, if you will. But only because I don't think there's a lot of other competition inside that
No.
division. That's why I give it to Miami.
And then also, as far as just in that division alone, the two other teams that are supposedly at the bottom, the one team will be, and that's the Joe Moorhead Akron. Okay, so it's his first year, and we know he doesn't have the players yet, but at least coaching wise, he might actually have a little bit of an edge with some of those drop offs from those other teams. So maybe Akron can win more games than you think. And I really like the trajectory of Bowling Green. I think Bowling Green is going to start. If you take a look at it, they had no wins, 4 wins in Scott Loeffler's third season, and that included an upset at Minnesota last year. They got Mac McDonald back at quarterback. They got a lot of key players back overall. I think Bowling Green is going to finish in second place in that division behind Miami.
Well, I won't be surprised because they were the number one team in the country in overall returning experience before Bill Connolly adjusted those ratings. They're now number 4 in the country, so they bring a ton of experience back to the Falcons this football season here. And his football team improved last year to 4 wins. So they have to improve this year with all that experience. They could end up being that bowl team, as you said. And as far as Akron is concerned, we started talking a little bit about them in the beginning of the show. This is a team that I would go over 2.5 wins on their season win total with this year. One, because it's Joe Moorhead. And where are they gonna win 3 games? You say, well, look at their schedule. It's not overpowering by any means. They'll beat St. Francis in their opener. So
Yeah,
you got one in the bag.
yeah.
They're gonna get drilled at Michigan State, Tennessee, and Liberty on the road. They're gonna play Bowling Green. That'll be a huge game for both teams. Uh, so I think, and I think they could possibly go to Kent State and beat Kent State even. So
Possibly, yeah.
yeah, it's a big rivalry game. They're only like 15 miles apart. So with between Moorhead and Akron, and that's low win total here, I think they can get over that total.
All right, and then the final division and in the conference, and our final conference on this preview show is the West for the MAC, and it's like the same teams. It's Toledo, it's Northern Illinois, and now Central Michigan, of course, has joined the fray along with Western Michigan. So those are the top teams that you have to contend with. Toledo, Jason Candle's now been there 7 years. Quarterbacks back. I think he loses a little bit though with some top players, skill players offensively, but it actually has some really good defenders. I think if Toledo wins this division, it's going to be because of their defense.
Well, Toledo was last year's number one ranked team overall in overall returning experience. They were a little bit choppy, yet they still won more money than they lost last year. Because they were heavily bet on that experience factor, they'll still be a competitor once again this year because they recruit as well as anybody in the MAC. The team I'm going to keep an eye on is Central Michigan, as you mentioned here. Jim McElwain's done a great job with this program
Yep.
here. I know he's away from the program now. What is it? He had a bout with seizures. Okay,
Oh, that's not
yeah,
good.
a Jerry Kill type thing. Okay, so but anyway, he's expected back, and
Okay.
if he does come back, he's done a great job with the program here. You take a look at him, 20 wins in 4 years, or 3 years, I should say. And he's also got a lot of experience coming back on the offensive side of the football here. And they 443 yards of offense last year, 32 points a game. They'll be a player inside this division.
Well, he's got the MAC Offensive Player of the Year in Lou Nichols, who was
There you
only a
go.
freshman last year
Yep.
when he gained over 1,800 yards on the ground.
Wow.
So
Nice.
yeah, the problem is they lost a lot of guys on defense, but we know he can coach. And Northern Illinois, Hammock did a really good job with Northern Illinois last year. They were 0-6 during the pandemic. They come back with 9 wins last year. Rocky Lombardi, the Michigan State transfers back. They've got some good players, including Rudolph and Tucker at receiver. They got some pretty good defenders as well. So Northern Illinois is going to be tough too. They're going to be chomping at the bit at the top of that division, as well as Western Michigan. Lester's back for his 6th year. Let's remember they upset Pitt last year at Pittsburgh, so that was a huge win. And they bring back Sean Tyler at running back, another really good player and have some good players back on defense as well. So usually Western Michigan is more of an offensive team, but besides Tyler and Crooms, even most of their talent is coming back on defense.
This is head and shoulders easily the best division of the two, the West Division here. In fact, the team that finishes third here could maybe be the better than the team that wins the East.
Yep.
You can make cases for a lot of these teams. Northern Illinois, again, with a ton of experience coming back, 18 starters. And you mentioned also Western Michigan, a football team that I think is almost, it seems like every year they're in the running.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's because of the recruiting they do. Tim Lester's done a real nice job with this program. He's been there 5 years. He's won 32 games. You could put a blanket over these teams here, and whoever emerges, you're not going to be surprised. Just the way that it all shakes out, the way it is. But I'm still going to back the Jim McElwain football team this year, Central Michigan.
And then the other two teams that round out the division, Ball State and Eastern Michigan. Mike New has done a nice job. They had 6 wins last year. They were 7-1 during the pandemic. But they've got to find a quarterback, so that's why that's a big issue for Ball State. They'll probably take a step down with all that competition in the division. And we, of course, know how good Chris Creighton has been as the head coach at Eastern Michigan. And I see no reason to think that Eastern Michigan won't be hanging around bowl territory again. And they have one of the top defenders in the conference in Jose Ramirez.
Yeah, you don't know what happened to this offense at Ball State last year. They went MIA last football season here. They went from 448 yards a game to 339.
Yeah. With a veteran quarterback, too.
On top of it, and 10 points a game less in scoring. The problem is, and it's probably because, and in fact, I'll tell you the reason is, they were the worst team in all of college football last year in the stats. They were outyarded in 12 of their 13 football games. You cannot get pushed around the field and lose the stats every week and expect to win football games. So if I were to tell you they went 1-12 in the stats, how many games would you expect them to win? Well, they won 6 games last year.
that can't continue.
That was pretty good. I say it's winning games with smoke and mirrors, so that cannot continue with this Ball State football program this year.
All right, now we're going to have predictions on the group of 5, including some of the independents we spoke about, every team except Notre Dame, on our show on the 24th. That's going to be the final show that we're going to have before the season kicks off in college football. So we're going to give not only some picks and some analysis on some of the games that will kick off a very quiet week 1 in college football, but we'll also have all of our predictions for both the group of 5, independents, and the Power 5 playoffs and all that. So that's coming up on our show on the 24th. Mark, appreciate it. Playbooksports.com. That's it. Check that out. And the ticker's been up there during our whole show. It's telling you all the other goodies that you could find over at Playbook Sports, including the magazine here, the Playbook magazine, not just college football, but NFL. You can't be without it if you are a serious gambler in football for the 2022 season. So, Mark, look forward to talking to you again next when we talk Power 5 football plus Notre Dame.
Hey, my pleasure as always, Greg. I look forward to doing the Power 5 with you, and we'll get back for those predictions in a couple weeks.